here joining us to help break this down a little further and give us a little prediction of what we can expect. CEO of BERI, Business Environment Risk Intelligence. You and I have talked about this a lot. Greece is out of time and they are out of money. But 48 hours ago, we were still talking about a possible deal. So what were the sticking points? How close were they to an actual deal? What is Greece asking for and what is the EU asking for exactly?
Well, actually, Phil, 75 to 80% of the pension reform plan, that was the major sticking point, was agreed upon by the parties. The Greek government is, I don't need to be PC here, one of the most inept, one of the most irresponsible governments that I've seen in my field in the past 20 years. They actually knew they were going to come to this. Remember how they won the vote. They actually voted on or campaigned on anti-austerity. They campaigned on outside of...
Are you saying they didn't want a deal?
They didn't want... Look, I'll tell you this. The first reform measures, proposed reform measures that the EU asked Greece to send, they sent on a Sunday night. I looked at it and I laughed. It was trying to kill Moby Dick with thumbtacks. They weren't being serious. The next day, Eurozone leaders said this is a great start. But do you remember who said this is absolutely irresponsible, this is a no-starter with? Head of IMF. Christine Lagarde, right? Greece was never, this new government was never serious.
You're still not answering the question, what is it that, if they don't want this deal, what deal do they want? I mean, are you saying they want to default?
They are going to default. Well, tomorrow is not going to technically default.
But do they want to default?
Well, nobody wants to default, right? But they don't have the money to pay. Now, they're asking the Eurozone leaders to, for a debt relief and then another restructuring of their debt. Now, what would the Italians, the Spaniards, the Portuguese would say if the Eurozone leader said, yes, let's do it?
What does Juncker have to do? What does Hollande have to do? What does Merkel have to do to get the Greek people to say yes? What can they give them?
I don't know if they want the Greeks to say yes. Behind closed doors, they also understand that this has come to the point where it might be better.
You're saying they've had enough?
They had enough. Well, Merkel might not, because for Merkel, ever closer union is very important. But German people had enough. They don't want to. They don't want to pay more for Greek debt anymore.
So we just went over to global markets. Asia's hammered. Europe's hammered even more, and the U.S. didn't do very good either. I mean, no one's liking this. Everyone's going to get hurt. It's an awful game of chicken. And yes, the Greece people probably will get hurt the worst, but it's not good for anybody. Nobody's a winner in all this. Is there going to be contagion? Do we need to worry about the rest of the world?
I would be telling you an absolute yes if we were talking about the same issue 3 years ago. Now, the structure of the loans changed. Back in the day, 2011-12, 75–80% of the debt was in private hands. That has changed thanks to ECB policies, thanks to government policies. That has changed. So, and also let us not forget who heads the ECB, Mr. Draghi, an Italian national. He actually put his name to it. He said, we'll do whatever it takes. They are going to buy bonds. They're going to increase the prices of the bonds. Yields will go down. Look at the Portuguese and Italian or Spanish yields today. They were below 2.5%.
People ask, okay, so they default, or they technically or indirectly they default. They don't pay to make the payment back to the IMF or any other payment for that matter. So what? So what they leave the euro? Why do any of us care whether Greece is in the euro or not in the euro? What's the ultimate impact?
Well, let us remember their economy is in shatters. It's absolutely a chaos there. So for them to leave the Eurozone without any plan would mean a humanitarian disaster that will take place. It's a catastrophe. So watch this. Even if Greece votes no on Sunday, there will still be an aid package by the Eurozone leaders to help a short-term transition in the country, in effect also kind of mitigating the possible contagion in the region.
But in terms of the EU officials, if they vote no, which is not until next week ultimately, what happens the next day? Do the banks never reopen? I mean, do they automatically get booted out of the euro?
I will tell you the best sign to look at is interbank lending, Phil. If Bank A in country B stops lending to Bank C in country D, there's a problem. Why? Because Bank A thinks that Bank B is exposed to Greek debt, and eventually they're not going to be able to pay back. So watch the Libor rate tonight, tomorrow, Thursday, Friday markets are closed here, but watch the Libor rate. If there's any spike in the Libor rate, Greece exit is going to happen.
What are you telling investors? You know, but by the way, I want to point out, everyone was watching a euro when this announcement first came out about 24 hours ago, and the euro initially got clobbered, and then it kind of climbed back up, which is ultimately very weird, because somehow people believed that the euro was going to be, this whole fear of them leaving the euro was really nobody seems to care about that
Yeah,
part.
two reasons, right? Contagion effect, that means it's kind of controlled, it's good, but at the same time, they may be taken into consideration that Greece will leave. If Greece leaves, the value of the euro is going to go up. Remember, Greece is not a very strong economy, and it's putting the euro down, so if it leaves, maybe the market is
So I'm going to hold you. So
that.
you're saying that bad news for Greece is good news for the rest of Europe. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that exactly.
But that's what it sounded
well,
like.
strong euro is not good for the eurozone. I mean, they need a lower euro to
But my point is
increase
they can move on to focus on growth and focus on other things
Sure,
besides
they
the
can
Greek
look at
crisis.
medium to long-term thing. They need to do fiscal union. They need to do banking union. This is the reason they're in this problem, because they only had monetary union.
Last question, is there hope for a last-minute deal?
There's always hope, right? There's always hope. Tomorrow, the payment to IMF can also be rendered. We don't know this, but eventually, looking at the situation the way it is, and Mr. Tsipras, I heard him speak in St. Petersburg, I think Greece has chosen an alternative for itself.
Oh,
and I think
boy.
Sunday is going to tell us what that is.
We are learning as we go on this. Saruhan, thank you very much for helping us.